Welcome to the Brennan Brown's Cuts of Facts and Theories podcast show. I'm your host, Brennan Brown, and today we have a new guest called Sanyu, who is an author, a motivational speaker, and also has a non-profit organization called the Brown Kids Read. But we're going to dig deep into all this with her. So welcome to the show and explain yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Sanyu. I'm 17 years old, and as Brendan said, I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called Brown Kids Read Incorporated, which I started in 2018 to motivate all children, but especially children of color, to read more diverse literature. I'm also the children's book author of Subi Sunny Smile, which is a story that I published last year based on my younger brother, and it focuses on three main themes. The first being dental hygiene, the second being cultural appreciation, and the third and most important one is anti-bullying, which is something I'm passionate about because I've had my own experiences with bullying. I'm also the host of a podcast called The Book Junkie, which is sponsored through my nonprofit, Brown Kids Read, and I am a junior advisory board member and broadcaster for Kids and Media Network.
Being the anti-bullying thing, that was a lot you listed out there. So back to the anti-bullying thing, what really inspired you to really get, this isn't even part of my script, but what really inspired you to really start this thing with bullying and everything?
So when I was 6 years old, I was starting at a brand new school. It was the first day. I didn't have any friends, and I walked onto the bus, and there was a girl who said that I was too dark to sit next to her. And that was really shocking to me because I'd never experienced something like that before, and I'd never seen anybody be so blatantly disrespectful and discriminative to another person that they didn't even know. And I knew that a lot of kids had experiences like that, not even just racism or colorism, whatever it may be, but just kids who were outright mean for no reason. And that's unfortunately the reality that we live in. So I wanted to write a story to combat that, to let kids know that they weren't alone when they are in situations like that. And then on top of it, to make sure that they're intentional about their kindness and intentional about the acts that they show others, to go out of their way to make them feel welcome and loved. So I decided to write Subi Sunny Smile in general because I wanted to write a children's book, and because every time I would do the pop-up bookstores for Brown Kids Read, people would always say, "You're selling all these other people's books. Where's your book?" And I just wanted to do it. So I used my Sweet 16 money and published Subi Sunny Smile. But the reason why I made it about anti-bullying was because I didn't want other kids to feel like they were alone.
Mm-hmm. And it's really a real thing out here. Bullying is coming back. I mean, it stopped now because it's the off season of school. But hopefully, it lowers down. But lately, after this pandemic thing, with all the gun violence, not just that, bullying has been increasing a lot. And it's just tiring. During the pandemic, when it first started, you didn't hear anything about shooting, anything about bullying, unless it was applied to racial injustice, because that was the main thing of 2020, racial injustice. But now, since the pandemic is somewhat slowly ending and people are getting back to normal, we're seeing a lot of that bullying returning and things. And I just really liked your story about how you said all that, because, all this, like I always say to all my guests and even myself and my audience, everything we go through helps us to become what we are now. And, I was bullied before too. And, looking at it, I laugh because even with you too, both our journeys, they may have been bullying us at our times when we were bullied, but look at us now. You're a successful author, a successful entrepreneur, helping kids, especially African-American kids, grow into reading. And even with me as a podcast host, I'm helping the youth, helping people, but also mainly trying to help also our own people, and help the community. So I really enjoyed everything you were saying. I enjoyed it. And another question I'm asked, I'm just not reading the script. This one's off the script. What really got you into podcasting, and how long have you been doing podcasting?
So podcasting was my response to the pandemic in a way, because for Brown Kids Read, our main source of income was those pop-up bookstore events that we did in person at different community events and churches. And unfortunately, once COVID hit, we weren't able to do that anymore for safety purposes. So our sales declined and we did not get as much engagement. So I knew that I needed to do something to engage our audience again. And then I also recognized that I was a teenager and I knew a lot of other teens who really despised reading. And part of the reason was because they weren't provided with books where either they felt reflected or that they had the opportunity to choose. So I started the Book Junkie podcast because it gives a platform for teens to share their stories through the lens of diverse literature and to share their perspectives through the lens of diverse literature. So in terms of the Book Junkie podcast, we have 2 different episode formats. The first format is author interviews. So I partnered with a couple of big publishers like Penguin Random House, Scholastic, and Simon & Schuster, and they send me authors that would like to be interviewed, and they're all authors of color, and I interview them on the podcast. I read their book, and it's just a great experience for the authors because they like being questioned by young people, and I love letting them know that we are interested in their book. And then the other episode format, which is really fun, is I choose a teenager. They fill out a form with questions about their personality, and then I read a book based on their personality, and then I invite them on the podcast, and we talk about the real world issues that are represented in that book. And through our conversation, my goal is to sway them to read the story. So I try to choose a book that has something included that they're passionate about. For example, I did a podcast episode with one of my friends who is passionate about police brutality and making sure people know that it's not okay. So I read Dear Martin and we talked about Dear Martin. I read another book. Like, there's just so many different stories and teens don't know about them because either they don't have access, they're not given the opportunity to read those stories and see what they're interested in, or they're closed-minded because they grew up in a society where books weren't available to them that they felt represented in. So I started the Book Junkie podcast for those reasons, but it was also my response to COVID-19 to help support Brown Kids Read.
And that's good. And to make you laugh here, make the audience laugh, I actually have the book Dear Martin right here
Cool.
under my desk. So when you said it, I was like, wow, because I actually got that book during the pandemic, I think. I got that book during the pandemic, or either I may have gotten it, I think, during something, I don't remember. And that's how I had found that book, and I was talking about social justice and stuff. And at the time, I didn't know what it was because I was just reading it just to read it. But, yeah.
Yeah, fun fact, Nick Stone was actually the first author that I interviewed for the podcast, which was awesome. I was really starstruck, and she has been so great. Like, she's one of my biggest role models. I love that. And also, I forgot to answer the other part of your question. I started the Book Junkie podcast in May of 2020.
What book did you do, and really explain your journey of being an author and what inspired you to be an author?
So I've been an avid reader since I was 4 years old, and I used to read books back to back to back to back. You could not take me away from a book. In fact, this is something I like to share. I usually had my whole bookshelf in my bedroom, but I would have one book that I read before bed, one book that I read during the day at school, and then one book in the car. So I would be reading 3 books at a time, and I would just love those stories. So I've always been encapsulated by children's books. And once I got a little bit older and I started Brown Kids Read, and I was working with so many different authors, more specifically self-published authors, it showed me that it wasn't impossible for me to write and publish a children's book at a young age because these people had done it on their own. And I actually had experience in the publishing field and seeing and working with authors who had done it on their own. So I wanted to be an author because, as I mentioned before, I wanted kids to feel like they weren't alone, but I also want to be a positive role model for the younger generation coming behind me to show them that this is possible and it's not out of reach. It's definitely within reach to follow your dreams and do what you want to do.
What is your plan for helping the Black community We already have everything you laid out, but any more plans, I should just say.
Part of my plan for helping the Black community is honestly just being myself, because I actually was talking about this on another podcast that I just recorded. We were discussing the importance of Black girls being prominent in the media and showing that we are being proactive and making a positive change in the world. Mm-hmm. Especially because we have two things that society has going against us. We're Black and we're girls, we're young women. And sometimes it's frustrating because we see so much discrimination. We experience so many microaggressions where people are automatically having preconceived notions that we are not capable of certain things. And we are already starting at a disadvantage as the Black community. So my job and my personal responsibility is to make sure that all of these other teenagers and all of these younger kids see a young Black girl that has not had any scandals in the media, who is making a positive change in the world, who's a hard worker, who's balancing a lot of things at the same time, not even just doing Brown Kids Read and writing a book, but I'm also a student athlete. I play basketball. I have a 3.9 GPA. Like, I'm doing all of these things and I'm working hard, not just for myself, but to show these younger kids that you can do it. And it's cool to both be a reader and to be a leader. So that's what my personal responsibility is to the Black community, especially to the younger kids out there.
That's good. And when you were talking about the ladies and things like that, as Black girls and things, I really believe, and I might be off topic here, but I think Black Panther will Wakanda forever, because just like how the first one inspired Black guys, Black boys to see a Black figure, this one may also inspire the Black girls, because now that T'Challa's out the story, you're seeing more Shuri and Okoye. I remember now in the first movie, they showed so much of how the Black girls fight just as well as the men did. So imagine how it's going to be on the second movie, with just mainly the leading cast being Shuri and Okoye. So I really think that movie, people saying it's going to be bad, but I always thought about it because people aren't thinking. I'm thinking this movie may impact a lot of Black females, just as well as how the first one impacted a lot of Black boys. So I'm really ready to see what that movie's going to do. And that's just my own personal theory of what it's going to do in the Black community. But will it be still a bad movie? Maybe, because T'Challa isn't in there. But for representation, it's going to be good. You also have a nonprofit where you turn your passion into profit, and a nonprofit is called Brown Kids Reads, which helps a lot of kids, especially African American kids, read. So how is it managing it, and what really inspired you to do it?
So sometimes it's a little hectic managing a nonprofit, especially because now I'm older and I have more freedom. I just got a car. I got my license. Like, I can go out now. So I want to hang out with my friends a lot. And, sometimes I have events or I have to do inventory and I can't be doing what I want to do. Well, not to say that I don't want to do those things for Brown Kids Read, because of course I do. But at the same time, I want to have leisurely activities. So doing Brown Kids Read has been so fulfilling. And I'm really grateful for all of the opportunities I had when I was first starting high school, because being able to say that I've been an entrepreneur since the middle of middle school pretty much into now my senior year is incredible. And I have learned so much along the way that it's immeasurable. I have had so many different experiences that have shaped me into the person I am. And the reason why I started Brown Kids Read was because I had a conversation with my friend. He's Puerto Rican and we were about 12 years old. And he told me that part of the reason why he really did not like to read books was because he did not see books in our school district that represented people who looked like him. And I was so frustrated because I'd been an avid reader since I was 4 years old. So I didn't really understand that mentality, but at the same time, I knew that it wasn't okay. And I knew that it needed to be changed. Like, we can't just accept the fact that our school districts and a lot of communities aren't promoting books featuring main characters of color just because it's the norm and because it's been going on for so long. So Brown Kids Read was my response to that issue, and it was a solution by taking those books and bringing them into the community and bringing them into the hands of kids who need to read them, which is all kids, because it's important to see books where you're represented, but it's also important to read books that are stepping into somebody else's experience and somebody else's world. And I like to give this example. In my experience, there are two kinds of books. There are mirror books and there are window books. And mirror books are stories where you're looking at a reflection of yourself. So you can see yourself in the main character, whether it be through race, ethnicity, nationality, your experience, school, whatever it may be, you relate to that main character in some way. And then window books are the opposite. So you are stepping into somebody else's shoes and viewing the world through their eyes. And actually, I shouldn't say the opposite, because you can always find something you relate to in a story, whether or not it's not blatantly obvious. So I think that's just the beauty in books overall. And I wanted to show that to all of the young readers that are coming up behind me through Brown Kids Read. So Brown Kids Read was my response to the issue of diverse books not being promoted to younger kids and them having direct access to an entire bookshelf where they can find a book that they feel represented in.
That's great. Everything is great. And with that part, I want to give you an advice with that, with the events and things getting older, because I know that I have been virtual for the past 2 years, going back to school this upcoming year. I just want to make sure that I know how to balance out. So they give you that advice. Make sure, and even audiences who are trying to balance out their career with also real life, you have to find that balance. You can't just go head on, I don't know about this. Decide, think, balance it out. Don't try to put school over your content or whatever you're doing, and don't put all your things over to school. Balance it both out. If you want to hang out with your friends, hang out with your friends. If you got to do that schoolwork, do that schoolwork. If you want to go to that event, go to that event for your brand or for whatever you got to do. You got to find that balance. Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
My goal by the end of next year is to be a freshman at Howard University. That is my 100% dream school. I want to go to an HBCU. They have the perfect majors for me. I just need to go there. So that's my goal for college. However, I do have goals that I want to meet in college. So as a student, I would like to have my own podcast / talk show, preferably with students at the school and with students who attend PWIs. So it would be kind of a safe space for Black college students everywhere, especially because the large majority of Black college students in America go to PWIs. So I want them to know that there is a big community out there of college students and create a support system for all of us, especially because I know how frustrating it can be going to a PWI. Both of my parents attended them, and the Black populations at those schools were very small. So that is what I want to do in terms of keeping my media and content up there. And then I also want to work on starting my own public speaking company and continuing my publishing company. So I want to start a public speaking company because I've done competitive public speaking since I was 9 years old. And I know the value in being able to convey your message effectively to a group of people. And unfortunately, public speaking is the #1 fear in the United States. So we need to change that, because public speaking can take you a very long way, whether it be in school, in your professional career, after your career, whatever it may be. Having those skills and starting young can be very impactful when you're older. So I want to start my own public speaking company and make it competitive and just give kids an opportunity to be their best selves in terms of public speaking.
And that's really great. And when I heard you just say that, that's a fun fact to learn. That's something new I learned. You learn something new every day. I never knew public speaking was the #1.
Exactly. Because people don't think about it, but every time I talk to one of my peers, well, I shouldn't say every time, 90% of the time when I talk to my peers and they're telling me how they feel about a presentation they have to give in school, or how they feel about something that they have to do, which includes speaking in front of a group of people, they're always terrified. Or when they have to read something in front of the class, they're petrified. And I think that if you build those skills when you're younger and you get comfortable with speaking in public, it becomes so much easier
Oh
And
yes.
being confident in yourself, it becomes so much easier.
Hmm. And that's where it comes in because for me, I remember when I was younger, I was never a motivational speaker like I was now because at the time I never found my passion, but I was always an introverted person. And
Mm.
before this pandemic, the pandemic impacted, but before it, at the end of 2019, I was trying to get myself to be a little bit more sociable. And now you see me now, I'm not an introvert or extrovert. I'm an ambivert. I'm both. I have both introvert and extroverted skills in me. And the more you speak, the more it's better. Because
Mm.
sometimes you got to speak to a whole audience. Sometimes you got to start like how I'm doing now with the podcast at first. That's what I did. I started with the podcast, speaking, 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 develop, develop, develop. Then eventually when you go to the real world, boom. Like you say, consistency and also my favorite word, discipline comes
Yes,
in when you have to be a motivational speaker. That's all.
absolutely true.
Mhm. Any new plans you're doing?
Actually, in terms of Brown Kids Read, we are in the process of developing a reading tutoring program. So we are working on partnering with a tutoring company that's already established and using our funds from Brown Kids Read to support them and be able to give scholarships to younger kids and then give them book packs along with that with diverse books so that they are able to read books that they feel represented in, but also at the same time build up their reading skills.
That's good. Any other interests outside of what you're doing now? I know you referenced basketball. Any more interests you have outside of what you're mainly doing, which is motivational speaking, teen author, and all those great things?
Yeah, interest-wise, I'd say that most of my extracurriculars align with each other. I'm also a member of the Homeschool National Honor Society chapter near me, and I'm the communications director for them. And I'm very, very involved in my church. I'm the president of the teen ministry. I am in the dance ministry. I'm in the teen choir. I do a lot of things there. So a lot of the time I'm in church, and we're actually planning a youth conference right now that is happening next weekend. Well, actually, no, this weekend. So I'm really excited for that. But mainly on a daily basis, I have basketball twice a day. I do my schoolwork and I do Brown Kids Read / Sleepy Sunny Smile business stuff. So yeah.
That's good. Is any of your churches or any of these youth things virtual?
Virtual, the only one that's virtual is the Book Junkie podcast. I am back to doing Brown Kids Read in-person events now. I have one on Saturday. I just did one this weekend and the weekend before last. So we're pretty booked for the month of August, which I'm very excited about. For Sleepy Sunny Smile, I actually have done online events and online story times, but I'm also shifting those to in-person events in bookstores now and in schools. So most of my extracurriculars are shifting from online to in person.
Good. So when you were talking about basketball, is that something you're trying to do as a career, or is that just a hobby you do?
It's not going to be a career of mine. I am not that good. Not saying that I'm bad. I believe in myself, but I also have a look into reality. So I am doing this because it is my competitive outlet and I'm a very competitive person. So if I were not to have basketball or something, another sport, I would have a lot of pent up competition inside of me and I would need to express it in a way that may not be healthy. So basketball, I love basketball. It's a way for me to I feel calm when I'm playing basketball, and maybe you won't see that externally, but I'm genuinely joyful when I'm playing basketball. So I plan to play in college, not on the regular school team because most of the schools I'm looking at are D1, and that's just not realistic for me, but I do want to play either intramural or club sports if I can.
Mm-hmm. And the same for me too. I don't play basketball, but I watch basketball, and even for me, people like say, "Oh, you should play basketball. You should play basketball. You're tall and things." I'm not tall. I'm only 5'8", 5'7", and I watch basketball as a way of entertainment. See, people got different reasons. Now I realize that with you, it gave me a more new perspective that it's more about your perspective than about watching or playing. Like I always say this: watching is different than playing. But hey, it's not all about that. That's not your answer. Your answer is, what's your perspective of it? How do you see it? Do you see it as
Mm-hmm.
a passion? Do you see it as an entertainment, whatever? You see it as competitive. That's why you do it. And I see it as me being entertained. So we all have our different perspectives. And also with the competitive thing, why be competitive in that if you can be competitive in the podcast space? Compete against me. Compete against, what's his name? MJ Hill. Compete against
Yeah.
Benjamin Wong. Compete against, I'm just joking. You don't got to compete against all of them. We
Yeah, I
all,
don't have to compete against them, but yes. You know what's funny? I feel like all of us podcasters know each other. Like all of the teen podcasters on Instagram, I think that's pretty cool. It's a really nice network to have.
yes, it really is. And I was just joking there because we shouldn't compete in the niche we're doing, because I can see for like a gaming niche or different niche, but
Yeah.
see, it really depends on your niche. And I just feel like even as a YouTuber, you shouldn't even be competitive unless a person really hates you. Then you need to beat them up and compete against them on the virtual, not physical, virtual
Yes.
space. But overall, I see it as in not your competitor, but your companion. Like I said on one of my old podcast episodes. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be of someone who took risks because I knew that the reward would outweigh the risk. I've taken a lot of risks as a young business owner. I've had a lot of failures and I've pivoted from them, and I've also learned a lot of lessons. So I know that a lot of young people and teens don't start their own businesses or try to make a large impact because they don't know how they'll be received by other people, or they're feeling imposter syndrome and they don't believe that they can personally do it. And I am an advocate for believing in yourself, doing your research, and getting the job done. So in order to do that, you do need to take risks. So I want my legacy to be of someone who took risks, calculated risks, and decided to run with it.
Yes. And the funny thing is, I just recently said that on one of my recent episodes that I'm going to try to publish this week. I just talked about how taking risks is important as a creative person. Also, when you said research, I was thinking about that because the other day ago, somebody always told me to always research when you make an episode. And research is important here. But to me, I feel that some episodes you don't have to research. Like, for example, if you're talking about how to find your purpose, that's simple, Now, if you're talking about financial literacy, then you do research. But to get to the point where I just want to talk about that because that has a little confirmation and reference. Yeah, creative people take risks. That's what I just said on one of my recent episodes. So that's great. Excuse me. That's great that you want your legacy to be about a person who took risks, calculated ones, like you said. And any last words, any last things you have to say before we end this episode?
I just want to let people know how to contact me. You can find me on Instagram at Sanyu Speaks, so SSANYU Speaks, or at Brown Kids Read, or at Share a Smile Books. Those are my 3 different businesses. My websites are brownkidsread.org and sanyuspeaks.com, so you can go check those out if you're interested in learning more about my children's book or my nonprofit. And my DMs are always open to any teens or young people who would like to learn more about starting their own business or publishing their own children's book, because I do have a publishing company to help you with that. So just send me a DM to Sanyu Speaks and I will get back to you within 24 to 48 hours with any questions or answers to advice that you need. So just let me know, and I am so excited to help you. I do free teenpreneur consulting, so I am a resource for you if you ever need it.
If you make YouTube videos, if you do anything, you're still an entrepreneur. Because, see, people don't realize, like, when I did YouTube channels, I just thought I was never an entrepreneur. This year, beginning of this year or late last year, I realized that this whole time I was an entrepreneur. Even from early 2020 when I first started the podcast in March. Because it's not that I'm an entrepreneur or traditional. I'm a content entrepreneur. That's what's called a content entrepreneur or a content creator. Because the word creator. You make your own content. Like, I am an entrepreneur. My YouTube channel is the business. The videos are the product. Right there. So,
Exactly.
just for anyone to know there, you're still an entrepreneur if you make video content or if you sell something. Because in a way, you're still selling something, a video for free. And then if you're monetizing it, you're selling it for free just to make more money. Or if also promoting that product, making even double the money, with also putting it on more of your socials, which is even more money, more. See how it gets bigger and bigger as a creative? That's why when you're creative, your brain just pops in a good way. I was just talking to my friend Jeremiah about that recently. So yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoy this wonderful podcast episode. Hopefully you enjoy everything. Everything that she listed is all down below on the description. So please go click anything she has down there. Check it all out. And thank you, Sanyu, for joining this episode. And God bless you.
Thank you, Brendan, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Alrighty. Goodbye.